Angela. Military, fire service. United States Air Force, reservist for almost 20 years. 6 overseas deployments to the Middle East. EMT, paramedic, fire service EMS, 22 years. EMS lieutenant. Aeromedical evacuation technician. Certified flight communicator, and transport medical technician. I had the pleasure of meeting Angela shortly after she was promoted to training officer with the local metropolitan fire department. One of her chiefs knew that she and I shared an interest in meditation and mindfulness, so he facilitated the connection. We met in a coffee shop, and I liked her right away. Her intelligence is almost intimidating, and she's impressively articulate. But her warmth and sincerity lend a humility that makes her easy to be with and likable. I love talking to her. I always learn something. Angela came to my house one evening after work so I could interview her for this book. We dined on veggies and hummus and fruit and cheese while we visited and talked about her impressive career and the jaw-dropping things she has seen and done in her 20-plus years of service. Difficult experiences. Angela's story begins when she was only 18. She grew up in Oklahoma City, and while she was still in high school, she signed up to volunteer for a search and rescue organization. She took CPR and first aid classes in high school, and she says she always felt drawn to that kind of work. I could not believe my ears when she told me what her first big volunteer experience was. It was the Oklahoma City bombing. Now, remember, she was still in high school. Angela said she went to the location of the bombing with a dust mask, gloves, and a flashlight. When she arrived on the scene, she saw lines of people, rescuers of all kinds, waiting to get in the building and help. She got in line, entered the building, and began searching, digging around in the rubble, feeling for bodies. Whenever she came upon a body, she immediately went about trying to determine if it was dead or alive. In 2 full days of searching, Angela did not find one person who had survived. She found bodies, just no survivors. When I asked her about the shock and trauma of the situation, she admitted it was pretty terrible. She says she was offered some form of debriefing on scene by a psychology student, but she declined. After graduating, Angela went to college for a couple of years, but admittedly didn't do very well. During those years, she noticed a lot of residual issues stemming from the bombing. She was having nightmares and persistent thoughts about the event. It became a preoccupation. She followed all the news about Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols, the then suspects, and she drove by the site often. While in college, Angela says she sought counseling, but she didn't feel it helped. She says there was no resonance with a therapist, so she gave up. Looking back, she realizes she felt numb for a very long time. Angela went on to join the Air Force as a reservist. During her service, she was deployed to the Middle East 6 times. She worked as a flight medic on a C-130 aircraft and was an aeromedical evacuation technician, flight instructor / examiner. I asked her what that experience was like, being on an aircraft in a war zone, landing in dangerous places, evacuating and transporting wounded soldiers. She told me the planes got shot at a lot, by rifles, missiles, and mortars. This, of course, was stressful and traumatic, but just part of the job. She also told me about a harrowing experience on base one night. In one single night, from sunup to sundown, 36 mortars hit the base where Angela was stationed. She said it was nonstop, so much so that she began trying to calculate her odds of surviving the night. I can't imagine how scary that must have been, how terrifying and traumatic. I realize that this is the reality of war. This is what war is, what war does. But that realization doesn't make it okay. At least, not to me. We need to do a much better job of caring for people when they return home from these awful experiences. In my opinion, We as a society have simply not paid enough attention to what our men and women in uniform endure. There has not been nearly enough understanding of the trauma, and therefore not enough empathy, support, and healing for these people who put their lives on the line, and, in the process, see, hear, and experience unimaginable devastation, destruction, and death. No human being is built to withstand this. Angela has since lost multiple friends, many to suicide. One friend drank herself to death. Another died of brain cancer, likely due to injury and physical damage incurred in her job as a military firefighter. And yet another died in a helicopter crash later, after he had returned to civilian life. That's yet another tragic commonality among military veterans. On top of the death and devastation they see, they also lose a lot of friends in the course of war and afterward to suicide, fatal injuries, illnesses, and ailments. Now add to Angela's traumatic military experiences her 22 years of working as an EMT and paramedic. Emergency medical personnel see and deal with heinous injuries, devastating loss, life and death situations, and tragedies most of us can't even imagine. With all this in mind, I asked Angela a pointed question. Knowing what you know now, would you take a different path? Her answer came quickly, and it was emphatic. No, she said, I would still sign up. Are you familiar with that popping eye emoji? I'm pretty sure that's what I looked like when she said those words. But here's what she shared with me. She said she always felt like this work was a fit for her. She said when she was younger she couldn't quite explain why, but then she learned something from a psychologist she met after deployment. He said, if anyone ever implies that you are an adrenaline junkie, addicted to the rush of adrenaline this job gives you, I want you to remember this. You are not addicted to adrenaline. You are addicted to relevance. Relevance. Phew. Let that one sink in for a minute. Here's the thing. I think this is prevalent among first responders. I believe many of them get into these professions to help others, as cliché as that might be. In my experience, a great number of these people feel a pull or a calling or whatever you want to call it. They need to help, to be of service, and to lend their natural skills and abilities to the greater good. There is something inside them that drives them to duty and service, to relevance, to knowing they are somehow making a difference in this world. As I type, my body is covered in goosebumps, and my eyes are teary because I feel such respect and appreciation for these people. They sacrifice a part of themselves for us, and I am deeply grateful. Turning point. Angela cites lots of little turning points along the way, but can pinpoint some key components that led to healing. I'll let Angela tell you in her own words. Certainly, there were many things that led to where I am today. I am seeing more and more of my life as connected, and recognizing that every part of my history, including all the challenges and triumphs, is the foundation of each subsequent moment. One particularly catalyzing moment was when I heard Joan Halifax teaching about having what is called a strong back and soft front. This is a characterization of someone who is vulnerable, allowing their heart to be accessible and deeply caring for others, as well as revealing their authentic self, while simultaneously embodying strength and capability. I was fascinated by this idea because I had seen the two, strength and vulnerability, as being opposed. It was the typical cultural understanding, particularly in first responder culture. I took on a sort of experiment in my life and began to reveal to trusted friends, as well as a therapist, what my experiences had been, and how I had, or in many cases had not, been processing those intense parts of my life and career. What I found in this exploration is that the most important people in my life didn't find these conversations nearly as distressing as I thought they might. They were interested, but not overly so, and they cared about me. They also knew that I cared about them, and it was safe to share their own vulnerabilities with me. We connected, not in spite of my thoughts and feelings, but because of them. Shockingly, no one reacted as though I was weak or broken. Cultivating a strong back didn't require the intentionality of accessing my soft front. I found that opening up to myself and others didn't wreck me in the way I worried it would. It wasn't the opening of the floodgates for all my suffering, which would leave me drowned and helpless. It didn't break me to begin feeling what actually was present in my mind, body, and spirit. Instead, it revealed that although I am tender-hearted and have some difficult emotions, there is also a breadth of happiness and love that I was unable to experience when I was closed off. It's the experience of emotion and the capacity to share it that connects people. And this connection is so needed for healing. Tools. Therapy. Angela says she eventually found a good therapist, and therapy has been hugely helpful. She emphasizes that there are good therapists, and you can find one. But, she says, you have to be ready. She also added, if a person finds himself wanting to explore therapy, they should not be discouraged by having to go through 3 or 4 therapists in order to find the right one. This might just be part of the process, and will be well worth the effort. Meditation. Meditation has saved my life. These are Angela's words. It has given me the ability to respond and not just react. It paved the way for all of the healing. Veterans' Path. Peace, acceptance, transformation, honor. Attending a program based on meditation, mindfulness, and physical and outdoor experiences provided by the organization known as Veterans' Path was a crucial step on Angela's healing path. Veterans' Path changed my life, she said. Telling my story. Angela included one more important step on her healing path. Telling my story. Vulnerability. This is huge, and it's the reason I wrote the book. Angela is wrapping up this segment of the book because she ended where I began. Storytelling. The importance of sharing our stories so that others don't feel so alone. What needs to change? Angela believes first responders must be able to start telling their stories. And to do that, they have to let go of the idea that their story is so unique that nobody will understand, or that nobody wants to hear it, or that telling the story will put the burden on others. She perfectly conveys the unspoken and underlying rhetoric that keeps first responders from speaking up. We don't need to be taken care of by others. We don't need help. We are the help, Angela shared. But that needs to change, she went on. We need to see ourselves as worthy of receiving the support that's being offered. This is such powerful insight. Another component that keeps first responders silent is fear. Fear of stigma, fear of being judged, even fear of being demoted or dismissed. Historically, it has not been acceptable to admit to mental or emotional distress in these cultures. Because first responders are our heroes, our savers and rescuers, They sometimes feel they must project invincibility. Sharing their stories means letting down their guard, and that requires vulnerability. Vulnerability has traditionally been seen as a weakness in first responder professions, so people stay quiet and suffer in silence. While writing an article about my husband's suicide for In Public Safety online, I had my own epiphany about vulnerability as I struggled to honestly share my experiences with David's mental and emotional problems and how they affected our marriage. After sending the article to my editor, I felt a rush of panic, and I recognized this feeling as vulnerability. It was scary and uncomfortable to let my own guard down and speak the truth. That experience led me to a deeper understanding of what first responders live with. I had nothing to lose in sharing my story. It just made me feel exposed. But first responders believe they have a lot to lose, and whether it's real or perceived, that belief prevents them from accepting the help that's available. This has to change. First responders must be allowed to tell their stories and seek help without fear of ridicule or retribution, which will require both individual courage and cultural evolution. I am so grateful to Angela for her willingness to be vulnerable and share her story with us. Angela now serves as a training officer for her department. What I've learned. In my work with first responders, and through my interactions with the 9 brave souls you just read about, I've noticed some common threads. The observations I'm about to share stem from my time with first responders in the classroom, my participation in first responder healing retreats, my friendships and relationships with first responders, and my time spent with these interviewees. I am not saying that every first responder has experienced or exhibits every one of these traits, but I've learned that these are some commonalities. They all suffer. This is the only commonality I can say categorically applies to each and every first responder and veteran. As a society, we have underestimated and glossed over the suffering of our active duty military personnel, dispatchers, police, firefighters, paramedics, EMTs, social workers, military veterans, emergency techs, clergy, ER personnel, nurses, doctors, and others. These people encounter, see, hear, endure, and are impacted by the trauma of others on a regular and ongoing basis. Yes, they are strong, skilled, and brave individuals, but they are also human beings with the same emotional systems the rest of us have. Don't think for one second that any of these people are built for this work. The fact that they are capable and heroic doesn't mean they don't feel pain or cry tears. They are compassionate, and they possess empathy. If you know a first responder who is hard or seems cold or distant, know that that is a mask, a protection mechanism, or a survival tactic. Don't let them fool you. They are hurting, and they're terrified to let their guard down. See the humanity in them. Give them the grace of your compassion and understanding, and do what you can to help. No human being is built to endure the stress, pain, trauma, and suffering of a first responder. They all suffer. Many experienced childhood trauma. It might surprise you to know that a high percentage of people who go into the helping first responder professions do so partly because of childhood trauma. Many have reported experiencing rough, dysfunctional, neglectful, and sometimes abusive childhoods. Not all, but some of the folks I interviewed shared with me that their childhoods were not ideal, to say the least. Often people who endured adverse childhood experiences will seek out professions that allow them the opportunity to help others and right the wrongs. I include this information in order to point out that the first responders who had traumatic childhoods are carrying that trauma on top of the trauma of the job. Remember earlier when I talked about accumulated stress and trauma? If childhood pain and dysfunction is not properly processed and healed, it simply piles up. Shame is an epidemic. There's a recurring theme among first responders, and it is shame. For some, shame originated in childhood or early life, when they were victimized or abused. For others, it developed over time, throughout their career, as they struggled to cover up how they felt inside. Some people feel shame because they aren't as resilient as they used to be, and feel themselves succumbing to the symptoms of stress, anxiety, and depression. Still others carry shame based on their actions and choices. Things like alcohol abuse, addiction, infidelity, domestic abuse, failed relationships, and estrangements. But worst of all, many first responders feel shame because they know they need help, and they believe that asking for help is taboo in their profession. Shame causes people to feel so bad about themselves and their circumstances that they will often lash out aggressively or withdraw completely from the people in their lives. They also turn on themselves, feeling devalued and unworthy of love, acceptance, and connection. They exist in a vicious cycle of self-hatred, grief, anxiety, and depression. Shame causes isolation, separation, pain, and disconnection, and it prevents people from asking for help. They mask and numb. In an effort to ignore and avoid their pain, some first responders keep themselves distracted or sedated. Addictions range from sex to gambling, from alcoholism to prescription drug use, and everything in between. They overeat, overcompensate, and overindulge. They become workaholics. They pretend to be someone they're not. They joke around, work out like crazy, drink like rock stars, anything to keep them from facing what's going on inside. They sometimes want to die, and sometimes they do. 6 of the 9 first responders I interviewed confided in me that they have either contemplated suicide, wished they would die, imagined death as relief, believed the world would be better off without them, or wondered what it would be like if they didn't exist anymore. That's 66.7%. I can't prove this, but I'm going to venture to guess that this is a good representation of first responders nationwide, maybe even worldwide. If that's true, then we can safely say that nearly 70% of our first responders have thought about dying as a way to escape the pain and trauma of their work. Let's all pause here for a few seconds and take that in. Couple more seconds. Are you processing this? These cultures have groomed individuals to be so averse to seeking help for mental and emotional issues that they sometimes imagine death as their only hope. For some, the thoughts are fleeting, without serious consideration of self-harm. They just find themselves thinking, what if that semi swerved right now and killed me? Or, I wonder if my kids would be okay if I weren't here. For others, thoughts of death and dying become a preoccupation. Then there are those who have considered and contemplated suicide, and still others who have plans in place, but have not yet taken action to end their own lives. And then there are those who have survived suicide attempts. More firefighters and police officers die by suicide than in the line of duty. And this has been true for at least a couple of years. As of the writing of this book, Approximately 20 military veterans die by suicide every day. And suicide is becoming more and more prevalent in all the other first responder professions as well. I hope each and every person who reads or hears the words in this section is as dumbfounded as I am as I type them. Our first responders, the people responsible for saving our lives, are so traumatized that they sometimes want to die. And sometimes they do. Chapter 6. Suicidal Ideation. Thoughts, talk, plans. Suicidal ideation means having thoughts about suicide or wanting to take one's own life. There are two primary types of suicidal ideation, passive and active. Passive suicidal ideation means a person thinks about death and dying, or wishes they would die, but doesn't have a plan in place to kill themselves. Active suicidal ideation is when a person has the intent to kill themselves and has a plan to do so. A few months ago, I participated in a Train the Trainer class for a first responder wellness class called Building Resilience and Surviving Secondary Trauma. This class takes a pretty deep dive into first responder mental and emotional health, as well as suicide. The instructor told us that when we suspect someone might be suicidal, it's not enough to ask if they are considering harming themselves, or any other limp noodle version of this question. He taught us to ask the direct and pointed question, are you planning to kill yourself? Then, if the person hesitates or answers with any version close to a yes, he instructed us to ask this very important follow-up question. Do you have a plan? If it's a yes, he warned, you must take immediate action. Suicide has become a serious national epidemic and is prevalent throughout all first responder professions. First responders, those who love them and those, like me, who want desperately to help them, must become aware of the signs of suicidal ideation and be willing to take action if necessary. What does it mean to take action? The possibilities are endless, and it depends on the circumstances. The only thing that's not okay is inaction if someone indicates they have a suicide plan. You can't walk away, shrug it off, or let it go and hope for the best. However, if a person in your life does complete suicide in spite of all efforts to help and support them, you must never blame yourself for their death. Ultimately, we are each responsible for our own choices. The common predictors of first responder suicide. The following list of symptoms can be signs or indicators that the possibility of suicide exists, especially if multiple symptoms are concurrent, chronic, or repetitive. Chronic stress, depression, anxiety, anger, intense irritability, aggression, alcohol abuse or alcoholism, drug use or addiction, hopelessness, isolation or withdrawal, suicidal ideation, talk of suicide. If you are experiencing multiple symptoms concurrently, do not hesitate to ask for help. Don't wait. Don't let your pride or fear get in the way. Reach out to someone and tell them you need help. Then accept the help and do whatever it takes to feel better and live better. Know that what you're experiencing is treatable. You can recover from this, no matter how bad you're feeling today. You can feel better, and you can go on to live your best life. Please, reach out right now. Call a friend, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, or text the Crisis Text Line. National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, 1-800-273-8255. Crisis Text Line, text HOME to 741741. Part 3. The Wisdom. Chapter 7. Meditation and Mindfulness. What they are and how they can help. I view meditation and mindfulness as brain training exercises. I say they are rooted in common sense and backed by science. This is how I approach these practices, and this is how I teach them. Meditation disclaimer for skeptics. If you think meditation is not for you because it's weird, hippy-dippy, new agey, or is only for Buddhists and monks, please set those preconceptions aside. Meditation is not necessarily connected with or in opposition to any spiritual philosophy or religion. It can be, but it can also be used as a secular brain training exercise for the purpose of stress relief and other benefits. What is meditation? Here is a simple definition of meditation. A few minutes of uninterrupted silence each day. Meditation is a practice or an exercise that brings your awareness into the present moment. And that is what we're going to focus on in this segment of the book. The importance of being able to bring your own attention into the present moment. Now, when I say silence in the definition, I don't mean that everything is supposed to go completely silent around you and inside your head. What I mean is that you are not talking or watching television or interacting with anything that is overstimulating or requires you to mentally engage. Some people like to listen to guided meditations or play soft music, white noise, or sounds of nature when they meditate. And that is fine. Also, you do not have to silence your thoughts. That is impossible, and trying to do so is stressful. With practice and perseverance, you will learn what to do when thoughts occur, and over time you will notice the thoughts begin to settle and subside. To me, meditation is the act of being. Some other good descriptions are observing, becoming familiar with, accepting, releasing, expanding, and allowing. What is mindfulness? Here is a simple definition of mindfulness: awareness in the present moment without judgment. Mindfulness is a state of being, a way of living. Mindfulness invites you to place your attention on the present moment in time and become aware of the self. When you are mindful, you are checked into the here and now and tuned into yourself. One deep, slow, full breath can initiate mindfulness. As you inhale, you shift your attention from wherever it was to this breath. This brings your awareness into the present moment, because your inhale is taking place in the present moment in time. And if you are focused on it, you are focused in the present moment in time. But how do you stay there? You take another breath. You expand and deepen these breaths. You slow them down and hold your attention on them. You feel the oxygen coming into your body and observe what's happening internally as you breathe. You listen for the sound of your inhale and exhale. You do whatever works for you to hold your own attention on the breathing and the self. It's all about observing and feeling. Now that you have your own attention, enjoy how it feels. Continue breathing. Feel for any sensations that might be occurring in your body. Notice how your body feels. Observe what is happening right now. Focus on how your body feels in your seat. Notice the heaviness and density of your body. Feel your rear end in the chair. Feel your back against the seat. Notice how your feet feel in your shoes, or how your feet feel on the floor, These are all ways to practice mindfulness. You can use mindfulness as an exercise for distraction from stress and overwhelm. When you do, there is an immediate experience of relief, focus, and mental clarity. You can also implement mindfulness throughout your day as a relaxation tool or a self-regulation skill. Practicing mindfulness helps you become more aware of your thoughts, feelings, and bodily sensations. If you wish to improve or change your mental or emotional state, you must first become aware of your current mental or emotional state. Mindfulness makes that possible. If you aren't living mindfully, then you are probably living habitually or mindlessly, consistently doing the same things in the same way, repeating patterns and making the same choices and mistakes over and over again, day after day. Like many people, you are living on autopilot, in some form of survival mode. Without judgment. What do I mean by without judgment? Practicing non-judgment in the present moment means that you avoid the typical automatic tendency toward labeling, criticizing, categorizing, quantifying, qualifying, or complaining about what you are experiencing in the moment. Instead of judging, you practice accepting. Let me give you an example. Let's say you have a very important appointment. You leave a little late, you run into traffic, and then you see construction up ahead. Now you are going to be very late. What is your automatic response? If you are a road rage person, your automatic response is most likely anger, hostility, maybe even rage. You feel agitated, stressed, and anxious. If you pay attention, you can literally feel this in your body. As this occurs, your breathing might become shallow or labored, your heart rate begins to increase, and your blood pressure begins to rise. You grip the steering wheel tightly, you clench your teeth, your shoulders are tight and constricted, you ride bumpers and weave in and out of traffic. Mentally, you are raging against yourself, angry that you left late instead of leaving on time. Outwardly, you are raging against the other drivers, the traffic, and the stupid Department of Transportation that decided construction on the highway at this time of day was a good idea. I might have gotten a little carried away there with my description. But for those of you who lean toward road rage, it's probably not much of an exaggeration. Why is this reaction and behavior a big deal? Because each and every time you have an automatic mental, emotional, and physical reaction like this, you are creating stress in your own system. The labored or shallow breathing, racing heart, and elevated blood pressure are probably causing stress hormones such as adrenaline and cortisol to flood your system. You don't need me to tell you this, and you don't need to do any research, because you can feel this happening in your body if you are aware. And that's the key. Awareness. If you have a desire to learn how to modulate yourself when faced with a crisis, self-inflicted or otherwise, and you believe that self-regulation would be a helpful tool, the first thing you need to pay attention to is your own attention. Where is your focus? Where is your awareness? What are you thinking about, dwelling on, obsessing over? Practicing mindfulness can help you increase your awareness, and that is a powerful shift. In this road rage example, without judgment would mean you would not initiate a mental rant of judgment against yourself, the other drivers, or the construction. Instead of judging, you would accept the situation as it is, because the situation is as it is. Your lack of acceptance of that fact only serves to create resistance to what is actually occurring in this moment that is out of your control. Resisting what is means trying to control the uncontrollable. It is futile and, honestly, a bit insane. Awareness in the present moment without judgment might go like this. Okay, I left a little late, I'm in traffic, and I'm going to be late. This is acceptance of what is. Now, instead of reacting habitually with road rage, you make the empowering choice to respond to the situation in whatever way is appropriate. Do you need to make a phone call and let someone know you're going to be late? Do that. And then go about massaging your awareness into the present moment by breathing and using the techniques I'm going to teach you in this book. Why? Because of the relief you will feel and the stress reduction you will experience. What is the present moment? The present moment can also be called now. It is this current moment in time. How do you know when you are focused in the present moment? When you are neither thinking about something from the past nor thinking about something in the future, that is when you are focused in the present moment. The past. The past is any moment in time that came before this now moment. That can mean 5 minutes ago, 12 years ago, or when you were a child. It's all the same. It's all in the past. The important thing to note about the past is that it's gone. It no longer exists. The past only exists in your mind and in your memories. You can't go back. You can't redo or undo anything. You have no power in the past. All you can do is think about it. And yet, we tend to spend a lot of time and energy mentally dwelling in the past, don't we? The problem with past thinking is that it often makes us feel bad. It tends to bring with it unpleasant memories and images and feelings of resentment, guilt, and regret. So thinking about the past can make us feel sad, depressed, and angry. If you are a person who leans toward past thinking, you might also lead toward feeling depressed, low, or disempowered. So, am I telling you that you should never think about the past? No. I'm asking you to begin to discern how past thinking makes you feel. You can train yourself to recognize when past thinking feels good, like a nostalgic, fond memory, and when it feels bad, like a disturbing memory of a dark time in your life. Then, when it feels bad, you can make the choice to bring your awareness out of the past and into the present. Often when I talk about this subject, people will ask, what about the importance of learning lessons from the past? If I don't think back on what has occurred in the past, I might not learn the lesson. To that I say, take the lesson, but leave the story. The thing that causes us to feel bad when we mentally drift into the past is the habit of replaying the incident or memory over and over in our minds, or retelling the story of it over and over to anyone who will listen. Again, this becomes a matter of discernment. You must learn to recognize and identify how you're feeling. When you are fully focused in the present moment, the past loses its power to make you feel bad. Here's an example. If you are watching a comedy on TV and you are fully present and paying attention to it, you feel pretty good. Why? Because your awareness is focused in this now moment on what's right in front of you. In that moment, you are not feeling bad about past events because you are not focused on them. But you won't always need something external like TV to distract you or hold your attention. You can learn to bring your own awareness into the present moment by focusing internally and holding your focus there. And you will experience the same outcome with the added element of peace and empowerment. Sound difficult? Or maybe even impossible? Trust me, it isn't. It takes some work and practice to learn this skill because the past is a strong magnet, and it will pull your thoughts and attention back if you aren't vigilant. However, If you want to experience the liberating relief of letting the past go and enjoying the rewarding power of the present, you have the ability to train yourself to do so, using the power of meditation and mindfulness. The future. The future, like the past, does not exist in this present moment. You can't do anything or affect anything in the future because it isn't here yet. All you can do is think about it and worry. And that's the problem with future thinking. We can't control the future with future thinking, but we sure do spend a lot of time mentally focused there, don't we? When you focus your thoughts into the future, you are typically worrying or practicing worst-case scenario thinking or precautionary thinking. You are attempting to imagine all the bad things that might possibly happen so you can be prepared if they do. Being as prepared as possible for the future is one thing. Obsessively worrying about future events you cannot possibly control until you're filled with fear and anxiety is quite another. Preparedness is a necessity in first responder professions, I will grant you that. Precautionary thinking is a part of the job. But do you find yourself practicing it all the time? Are there times and places in your personal life when you could let up on it a little? I am not asking you to never think ahead. I am simply suggesting that you begin to discern how future thinking makes you feel, and how it makes the people in your personal life feel. My husband always had a plan, and a plan B, and honestly, a plan for all 26 letters in the alphabet. He was prepared at all times for any catastrophe or tragedy that might occur. Part of this simply had to do with his makeup and personality, but he developed some of it as a result of the disorder and dysfunction he experienced in his life and as a cop. He felt preparedness and precautionary thinking were crucial in society and in the home to avoid chaos. David was so accustomed to using future thinking as a precautionary tactic that he lost his ability to modulate it. He tried to apply preemptive law and order strategies at home that were well-intended, but a step too far. He was always looking around for what might go wrong. Head on a swivel, as they say in law enforcement. This is known as hypervigilance, and it's very common among first responders. For first responders and their families, it can conjure stress, fear, and anxiety. Future thinking always involves worry. Worry causes fear, and fear creates anxiety. Therefore, future thinking creates anxiety. What's the antidote? Present moment awareness. The act of consciously shifting your awareness out of the future and into this moment in time can ease the anxiety caused by worrying about the future. Present moment awareness settles your attention into the here and now, and that brings relief. So what about planning, you might ask? How can I make plans and set goals if I'm not supposed to think into the future? I'm not asking you to avoid ever thinking about the future. I'm simply inviting you to begin practicing discernment when you find yourself future-focused. Notice how you feel. Is there tension or anxiety present in your body? Do you feel worried or fearful? If so, try using the tools I'm going to teach you in this book to bring your awareness into the present moment and experience the relief that's available to you. Why meditate? Meditation is an exercise that helps you focus your attention into the present moment. So, essentially, practicing meditation is sort of like strengthening your attention muscle. With patience and repetition, this will become easier and easier. And soon you will discover the ability to consciously bring your awareness into the present moment anytime you choose. When you meditate, you sit still in a comfortable position. Allow your muscles to relax and breathe. As you sit, you observe your breathing, your thoughts, and how you are feeling. You surrender into the present moment. You enter into a state of being, not doing, not trying to force outcomes, just being. During meditation, if you notice thoughts that are unsettling or stressful, you have the option to either observe those thoughts without judgment, or gently shift your awareness away from the thoughts to the sound, feeling, and rhythm of your breathing. Or you can observe how your body feels by noticing sensations and subtle vibrations that might be detectable. Any of these passive options will serve to hold your awareness in the present moment. When you surrender into the present moment, the future does not exist, nor does the past. You are not thinking about the past, worrying about the future, or focusing on people and circumstances you cannot control. You are simply being, with yourself, in the moment. The present moment has many gifts to offer, and there are many benefits available to you when you practice meditation. Stress reduction. Meditation is an evidence-based practice that helps you learn to manage and reduce your own stress. And I will discuss some of the scientific and empirical benefits later in this chapter. When you sit in meditation, you are still and quiet. You're breathing fully and deeply, which oxygenates your system. This assists in slowing down your heart rate, which can begin to lower your blood pressure. Your muscles begin to relax. Instead of going, doing, and thinking, you are slowing down. You are discovering how it feels to simply be. You are disengaging from all activity. You are giving yourself a beautiful gift of a few minutes of stillness, in which all the functions of the brain and body have an opportunity to settle, calm, and regulate. Emotional regulation, self-regulation. Emotional regulation and self-regulation become like superpowers once you get the hang of them. When you practice meditation and mindfulness, you become familiar with the power of observation. You learn to pull your awareness into the present moment and shift your attention to self. Then you observe. You just breathe, feel, and observe. Before you can regulate your emotions, you have to feel them, observe them, and become familiar with them. Once you got comfortable with the practice of observing, you can learn to identify emotions that aren't serving you well. And instead of being flooded by them, you can develop the ability to modulate or regulate them. Can you imagine having the power and ability to modulate your own emotions when you choose to? Think of instances both professionally and personally in which this might be a powerful skill to possess. Disclaimer: I am not suggesting that anyone ignore, override, or deny emotions. If in this process of discovery you find you have difficult emotions that continue to adversely impact you and those around you, please seek professional help. What I am addressing is our ability to evolve from habitual, reactionary individuals to more balanced beings by becoming familiar with and learning to balance the emotions that hold us back. A person who is habitually quick to anger can learn to observe and feel the anger, identify its origin, decipher whether or not it is appropriate in the moment, and modulate it when desired. Here's a great example. A friend of mine who was in the military and is now a police officer tells the story of a time before he discovered meditation and stepped onto a healing path, when he expressed hostility toward his then 5-year-old son. The little boy knocked over a glass of milk and began to cry. My friend reacted harshly, yelling at his son and making him cry harder. Looking back, my friend realizes he wasn't angry at the boy for spilling the milk. He was angry at him for crying. He had come to view any emotion other than anger as soft. Anger had become my friend's primary emotion, and it was habitual. It was ruling him and ruining his relationships. When my friend tells this story, you can see the emotion on his face and in his eyes. But through a process of healing, using meditation as his primary tool, he has developed the ability to recognize and identify his emotions and regulate them when he chooses to. He has become familiar with his emotions through meditation. Refer back to my definition of meditation and the list of descriptions I included. At home, self-regulation will help you become a more effective communicator. Plus, you will be setting a powerful example for anyone you live with, especially children. This skill can definitely help you develop healthier relationships. The same thing applies on the job. Take a moment to think about areas of your professional life that could be enhanced by developing this skill. Think of circumstances and interactions with others that might be enhanced or diffused when you start to apply emotional regulation or self-regulation. Personal empowerment. Personal empowerment means you feel more in charge of your own life, learning to bring your own awareness into the present moment and apply emotional regulation empowers you to respond to people and situations instead of reacting. That, my friends, is empowering. Do you ever feel like an old tattered flag being whipped around in the wind? Do you ever feel as though you have very little power in your own life? Would you like to feel more empowered? More in charge? Would you like to possess the life-enhancing skill of response as opposed to reactivity? Imagine how much more empowered you will feel. Inner peace. Now, before you roll your eyes at this term, hear me out. I'm not talking about some hippie love fest where we all join hands and sing and channel our inner Gandhi. Inner peace is simply the opposite of inner chaos. We all know what inner mental and emotional chaos feels like. We know that overthinking and an overactive mind contributes to stress and anxiety. And we've all experienced emotional chaos when our feelings seem to take over and flood us, resulting in unhealthy reactions to people and circumstances. What I am suggesting is an undoing of that, a settling of mental activity and emotional upheaval that brings about quieting and a calm feeling inside. Inner peace. Meditation cultivates mindfulness. I like to say that meditation is to mindfulness as exercise is to physical fitness. If you want to achieve better overall physical fitness, you know you have to exercise. There's just no way around it. You also know you have to exercise regularly. Sure, you could go to the gym right now, get in a good workout, and feel great. Endorphins would kick in, and you would leave the gym with an elevated feeling. But you won't wake up tomorrow morning physically fit. Achieving physical fitness takes time, repetition, and regularity. Similarly, if you want to begin to experience more mindfulness in your life, meditation is a great exercise to help you achieve that goal. Mindfulness is a way of life, a state of being. When you are mindful, you are more present in your own life, more checked in, tapped in, and tuned in to yourself in the present moment, less distracted, less reactive. Remember, earlier I said the practice of meditation brings your awareness into the present moment? It's like flexing your present moment awareness muscle. When you sit in a few minutes of meditation each day, you are practicing the skill of bringing your attention into the present moment. Over time, you will be able to call upon that skill in any given moment. Choosing to pull yourself consciously into the present moment will become second nature to you. So, if you want to experience more presence in your life, if you want mindfulness to weave itself into the tapestry of your life, practice meditation. Meditation cultivates mindfulness. My approach to meditation. I view meditation as a brain training exercise. Initially, sitting in stillness and silence while doing nothing but breathing and being might feel counterintuitive to you. This is normal. When you sit, especially in the beginning, you might feel restless, fidgety, bored, anxious, or a multitude of other things. But with some practice, you can train your brain and body to allow the stillness and embrace the silence. Brain training exercise. Training your brain to sit and stay is kind of like training a puppy. When you first get a puppy, it will not understand the command to sit and stay. It will be wriggly and jumpy and dart all over the place. But with some patience, practice, and repetition, you can train that puppy to do what you are asking it to do. The same goes for your brain. With some commitment and dedication, you can train your brain out of automatic habitual thinking and activity. At first, the brain might become very active. It might frantically remind you that you have things to do and things to worry about and to-do lists to make and attack. It will throw all its habitual worries, cares, concerns, and random thoughts at you. But you will gently show your brain who's in charge. By learning some of the tips and tools that I'm going to share with you in this book, you can train your brain to allow the stillness and silence that can reap so many positive benefits. This really is the biggest hurdle for most people in the beginning, but don't worry. I'm going to teach you some skills you can apply that will force your brain to comply and yield to the inactivity that is so very beneficial to your entire system. Rooted in common sense. We live in a society in which action, going, doing, and thinking are prevalent, praised, and valued. We receive validation for our busyness, and we tend to value busy people above what we might consider lazy people. Being skilled in the act of doing nothing is not usually high on the list of one's accomplishments, but I feel we should all rethink that. I believe people used to innately understand the importance of doing nothing for a few minutes each day. Did you know that people used to sit on their front porches and watch the world go by? When I was a kid, I spent a lot of time with my grandparents. I remember in the evening, after dinner, they would usually just sit for a while. If the weather was nice, they would sit outside on their patio. They would not automatically turn on a radio or television. They would just sit. In modern times, if we say we are going to relax, that usually means we sit on a couch in front of a television. We have a remote control, a smartphone, and maybe a laptop or tablet. That might feel relaxing, but you are still actively engaged mentally, visually, and auditorily. I'm encouraging you to learn to disengage from all of that and simply learn to sit quietly with yourself. When you meditate, that's exactly what you do. You sit for a few minutes and disengage from everything. You can listen to a guided meditation, some soft music, white noise, or the sounds of nature in the background while you sit. But the practice requires you to disengage from your physical environment, from devices, and from other people. Doing so gives your brain and body a chance to settle, to reset and recalibrate. In other words, there's nothing for you to do during meditation. You're not trying to force an outcome. All the benefits that are available to you through meditation will happen naturally. You just have to allow for that possibility. Doesn't it seem like good, old-fashioned common sense that this might be good for you? Backed by science. Meditation and mindfulness have made their way into the mainstream. There have been thousands of scientific papers written on the evidence-based health benefits of meditation. Some of those benefits include lower blood pressure, reduced anxiety, alleviated depression, diminished sleep problems, enhanced immune system, improved brain function. While more studies are needed and research is ongoing, there's compelling data to support meditation as a viable tool to improve mental, emotional, and physical health. Lower blood pressure. It is well documented that stress contributes to high blood pressure, and there are numerous studies linking meditation to lower blood pressure. Practically speaking, when you sit in meditation and focus on deep, slow breathing, your entire body begins to relax. This relaxation helps calm and reduce the symptoms of stress, which can lead to lower blood pressure, especially when meditation is practiced regularly. Reduced anxiety. Anxiety is an emotional state precipitated by perceived threats, worry, and fear of the unknown and uncontrollable. Meditation has been shown to help regulate brain function and balance body chemistry, which can help reduce the symptoms of anxiety. Alleviated depression. Depression is a mood disorder that is marked by persistent feelings of sadness, emptiness, hopelessness, pessimism, irritability, and fatigue. Meditation has been linked to mental, emotional, and even physical regulation and balancing, which can help reduce the symptoms of depression. Diminished sleep problems. Meditation is a great sleep aid, largely because it raises levels of melatonin in the body. But those who meditate also have other advantages in getting a good night's sleep. The breathing and relaxation techniques used in meditation, paired with the ability to quiet the mind, can help promote better sleep. Enhanced immune system. Chronic stress keeps the body in a state of detrimental activation, which increases wear and tear on biological systems. Meditation offers rest and deep relaxation to help the body come into balance, function optimally, protect itself against viruses and other infections, and repair existing damage. Improved brain function. Of particular interest to me in my work with first responders is the research showing deactivation and decreased gray matter in the part of the brain called the amygdala. The amygdala plays a key role in the processing of emotions and controls the stress response, also known as the fight or flight response. When the stress response is turned on, the body releases stress hormones, such as cortisol, into the system. High levels of cortisol have been linked to moderate and severe health problems. Studies show that first responders tend to have high levels of cortisol due to hyperactivity in the amygdala, and that often the amygdala is enlarged in the brains of first responders. Research indicates that meditation rewires, restructures, and physically changes the brain. Studies demonstrate that meditation causes decreased activation and decreased gray matter in the areas of the brain associated with stress, while increasing activation in the areas associated with a positive mental attitude, self-awareness, decision-making, and compassion. For more on this, please refer to Harvard neuroscientist Dr. Sarah Lazar's studies from 2005 and 2011 on how meditation affects the brain. Or you can read the 2011 article, 8 Weeks to a Better Brain, published by the Harvard Gazette online, which highlights Dr. Lazar's work. In general, neuroscience is telling us that intentional activation and deactivation of certain areas of the brain initiates neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to adapt and change, and that meditation is one tool we can use to promote neuroplasticity, thereby improving brain function. If you're interested in learning more about the benefits of meditation, all you have to do is search meditation articles on your computer and start reading.